The grand chandelier in the Royal Oak Theatre glittered like a constellation, each crystal refracting the warm light onto the velvet seats below. Tonight, the auditorium was packed with eager faces, music lovers, critics, families, and dreamers alike. The anticipation in the air was almost tangible, like a note stretched tight on a violin string, ready to sing. Among the crowd, whispers traveled like ripples across water. Everyone had come to witness the premiere of the renowned violinist, Elena Voss, a woman whose music was said to pierce hearts and awaken dormant emotions. The orchestra was already on stage, tuning, adjusting, and exchanging polite nods. Elena, poised in her flowing midnight blue gown, moved to the center of the stage, her violin cradled like a delicate bird. The audience fell into a hush as she raised her bow, and the first note resonated with a clarity that made even the most restless soul pause. Her performance was exquisite, each phrase telling a story without words, each crescendo lifting spirits, each diminuendo coaxing sighs from the crowd. Yet, as captivating as she was, the evening was about to take a turn that no one expected. Backstage, a tiny figure peeked out from behind the heavy curtains. He was no taller than 3 feet, with a mop of curly hair, sparkling eyes, and a violin that seemed almost comically large in his small hands. The boy, barely 10 years old, was known among his teachers and mentors as a prodigy. He had studied under some of the finest instructors in Europe, but his shy nature often kept him away from the spotlight. Tonight, however, an opportunity had arisen, a chance to play alongside Elena Voss herself. And though his heart raced with fear, he could not resist the call of the stage. The stage manager, a kindly woman named Margaret, whispered to the boy, "It's your moment, darling. Go on when she signals. Trust yourself." The boy nodded, swallowing hard. His fingers trembled as they hovered over the strings of his violin. Somewhere deep inside, though, a voice whispered courage. Music had always been his truest companion, a friend that understood him when the world did not. Elena's solo was reaching its zenith, a passage so full of yearning that some members of the audience were already wiping tears from their eyes. And then, as if by some unspoken agreement, Elena glanced toward the side of the stage, her gaze meeting the boy's. There was a spark of recognition, a silent invitation. She raised her bow ever so slightly, a signal for him to join. The boy's breath caught. This was it. He stepped forward, each small footfall sounding louder in his ears than any applause could. The audience, curious, leaned forward in their seats, noticing the tiny newcomer stepping into the limelight. As the boy lifted his violin, a hush descended that was more profound than before. Elena's music softened, leaving space, giving him room to breathe and play. And then, with a trembling bow, he drew the first note. It quivered at first, tentative, like a fledgling testing its wings. But as Elena adjusted to his tempo, the notes began to flow, weaving together in a tapestry of sound that seemed almost impossible. 2 violins, one towering in experience and one tiny but brimming with raw emotion, merged into a duet that neither rehearsal nor sheet music had fully prepared them for. The audience sat transfixed. Some clutched their programs as if they could hold on to the magic spilling from the stage. Others had tears rolling silently down their cheeks, unsure if it was the music or the sheer beauty of the moment that had undone them. The boy, despite the tremor in his hands, found himself rising to the occasion. His confidence grew with every bow stroke, his notes brightening, dancing, and spiraling around Elena's like fireflies in the night. Elena smiled, not in the polished way of a seasoned performer but in genuine delight. She leaned slightly toward him, matching his phrasing, her eyes gleaming with encouragement. In that instant, the auditorium felt suspended, time bending around the music, holding everyone in a cocoon of awe. The boy's notes sang of courage and innocence, of nights spent practicing under lamplight while the world slept, of dreams larger than his small frame. Elena's notes carried the depth of experience, of loss and triumph, of a life wholly devoted to the violin. Together, their music became a dialogue between worlds, youth and mastery, hope and wisdom. Midway through the duet, a tremor ran through the boy's fingers. He faltered on a tricky passage, but Elena's bow never wavered. Instead, she leaned in, guiding the music gently, wrapping him in the safety of her expertise without overshadowing him. The moment of tension became part of the performance, an intimate testament to trust and human connection. From the balcony, a woman dabbed at her eyes. Beside her, an elderly man clutched his chest, overwhelmed by the beauty before him. The young couple in the front row held hands so tightly their knuckles whitened. No one wanted to blink, for fear of missing a single magical note. Every emotion the music carried, longing, joy, nostalgia, vulnerability, was palpable. The theater had become a vessel for something transcendent, a reminder that music could bridge generations, heal unseen wounds, and awaken the soul. As the final notes approached, the boy played with a fervor he had never known. Each vibration of the strings was a heartbeat, a testament to the bravery it had taken to step onto the stage. Elena followed him, not to lead but to harmonize, allowing his voice to shine. The climax swelled, a cascading torrent of sound that seemed to lift the roof, leaving echoes of pure emotion in its wake. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. Silence followed, a silence so profound it almost roared in the ears of the audience. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. And then, like a dam breaking, the theater erupted. Applause thundered, mixed with sobs and cheers. People were on their feet, some laughing through tears, some clapping until their hands ached. The boy, overwhelmed, sank to one knee, bowing humbly to Elena, who returned the gesture with grace and pride. Backstage, Margaret enveloped him in a hug. "You were magnificent," she whispered. "Do you know what you've done?" The boy shook his head, unable to speak, his chest too full of exhilaration and disbelief. Elena approached him, her eyes soft. "You brought your heart to the music," she said. "That is something no one can teach. Never forget it." She gently patted his shoulder. In that touch, the boy felt a passing of a torch, a validation of all his quiet hours spent with the violin. The evening ended with the audience on their feet for several minutes, refusing to leave, as if afraid the magic would vanish if they did. Outside the theater, the streets buzzed with excited chatter. Strangers met and shared tears and smiles, recounting the tiny violinist who had moved them beyond words. Social media exploded with clips of the duet, and soon the world knew of the boy's talent, but even viral fame could not capture the depth of the moment. The magic had been lived, felt in real time, shared between a master, a prodigy, and an audience who had dared to open their hearts completely. Weeks later, the boy returned to his lessons with renewed determination. He was still small, still shy, but something inside him had shifted. He had tasted the wonder of creation, the joy of shared vulnerability, and the power of music to unite hearts. Elena continued her world tours, but she kept in touch, sending letters and recordings, nurturing the young talent she had helped launch into the world. And in the hearts of those who had witnessed that night, the memory lingered, of a tiny violinist, a surprise duet, and an auditorium full of tears. It was a story of courage, connection, and the way art could touch the very core of human existence. In that theater, music had become more than sound. It had become proof that sometimes, the smallest among us can leave the largest impression. From that night forward, the boy played with a new understanding, that music was not just about notes or technique, but about honesty, bravery, and the willingness to share one's soul. Each time he performed, he remembered Elena's encouragement, the warmth of the stage, and the faces of those who had cried and laughed together, united in a moment that would never fade. And so, the tiny violinist grew, not just in skill, but in spirit, carrying forward the memory of that extraordinary duet, a reminder that beauty often arrives unexpectedly, and that sometimes, it is the most unassuming performers who leave the deepest marks on the world.